Hi guys, I am Ryan Thomas. This is my YouTube vlog. Mr. Ryguy92 is the name of the channel. My Facebook, where I post these videos, is called The Thomas Take, or just Thomas Take. Thomas is my last name, Ryan Thomas, my take on the majority of sports. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. Usually I do my UFC predictions, but there's so many good fights coming up in this, next from August up until December, that I really want to give you guys, my top 5 fights that I'm most looking forward to. And of course, they're all main events. Starting off at number 5, Chael Sonnen versus Shogun Rua is a 5-round light heavyweight fight on UFC on Fox Sports 1. And this fight is really good for the UFC because it's two guys that have been in the UFC for a long time. Shogun is a former champion. Chael is a long-time contender in the middleweight and light heavyweight division. He's a long-time contender in mixed martial arts. So to put him up against Shogun makes a lot of sense. Chael lobbied for the fight at the UFC 161, I believe it was, when Little Nog pulled out of his fight with Shogun. Chael raised his hand and said that he would do it, and unfortunately the timing wasn't right, but they remade the fight and pushed it to August, which I'm really excited about. I think that Shogun has a lot left in the tank. He's lost 2 of his last 3 fights to Henderson and Gustafsson, and Gustafsson is now challenging for the title, while Henderson is coming off a loss to Rashad Evans. And Chael Sonnen, a very interesting career that he has had. He has lost his last 3 fights, 2 of which to, he's lost his last 2 fights, 1 of which to Anderson Silva and 1 of which to John Jones. So, very, very interesting path that Anderson has went on throughout his career, that Chael Sonnen, has went on throughout his career, and I'm really excited to see what type of Chael Sonnen do we see. Do we see the same original game plan that he comes out with as far as going right after the guy right away and putting Shogun down? Shogun is a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, so it's going to be a very interesting strategic fight, and I think it should favor Shogun. I would favor Shogun in the fight, but cardio-wise, if the fight goes longer, I would favor Chael way more. Stand-up-wise, Shogun has the edge. Ground-wise, wrestling-wise, Chael has the edge. So I believe that Chael will use his wrestling as his strength, and that could be what wins him the fight. But I'm going to lean towards Shogun a little bit more, just based off of his stand-up. And if Chael can't take him down, which I think he could, but if Chael can't, then he's going to be in some trouble. It could either go knockout for Shogun, submission for Shogun, or it could go decision for Chael or submission for Chael. So it's a risky, it's a close matchup, and that's why I'm so fascinated with it. That's why it's my number 5 fight on my list. My number 4 fight is John Bones Jones, the light heavyweight champion, who, as I mentioned before, is coming off a win over the before-mentioned Chael Sonnen, and Alexander Gustafsson, who I mentioned, is coming off a win of Shogun Rua. So a little bit of intertwining paths between those 4 fighters, and I really think that this is an interesting fight for Jones because he has dominated everyone that has been put in front of him, but Gustafsson adds a different dynamic that he has never faced before. As far as Gustafsson's reach being on point with John Jones, I'm pretty sure John Jones still has the longest reach in the UFC. His reach is longer than Gustafsson's, but Gustafsson is a big fighter, and Jones has never faced someone that's like as big and bulky as him. Jones is like 6'4", Gustafsson's like 6'4" as well. So that's a fight that I'm really looking forward to. The third fight that I'm looking forward to, and I'm really undecided as to whether I should leave this on my list or not. I am excited for it, but there is the original fight that I had on my list was Cain Velasquez versus Junior Dos Santos 3. I'm really excited for that fight, but I think that Cain is more of a favorite in any of these 5 fights. He's the most favorited going into the fight, so I'm not really looking forward to that one as much as this fight that was just announced for UFC 164. UFC 164. Benson Henderson versus Anthony Pettis 2 for the lightweight title. I'm really looking forward to that because these guys have a history with each other. This is the last guy that Benson Henderson has lost to, and it's going to be a barn burner fight. These guys' careers have kind of spun in circles around each other since they've last fought back when the WEC was still around, and I'm just excited for the fight. I think that it's a close matchup between two guys that are fast. They both throw really great combinations as far as striking goes, and wrestling is an interesting interesting dynamic in the fight. I'm going to favor Pettis in that one, to be honest with you. I think that Pettis is better than Henderson. Henderson has been the champ for quite a while, but he's had a lot of close fights that has led fans to kind of be undecided as to where he belongs, if he belongs, as in the weight class as the champion. And I thought that he lost that second fight to Frankie Edgar. The Gilbert Melendez fight was kind of up in the air. That fight wasn't as enjoyable for me as I would have hoped it would have been, and I think that was because Melendez didn't push Henderson enough, and if Melendez pushed Henderson more, he might have won the fight. So just based off that, I'm going to give the fight to Pettis, prediction-wise. My second fight is he's always been my favorite fighter since I started watching the UFC around 2005, 2006. George St. Pierre, the welterweight champion. He's taken a lot of flack, and I don't necessarily blame people for that, for flacking him as far as his fighting strategy goes. He fights in a particular style where he puts his opponents on the ground and keeps them there. And not gonna lie, has been reluctant to finish a fight in quite some time. And for a while I defended him, but that last fight with Nick Diaz, it was not as good of a fight as I had hoped it had been. I was really excited for it. I always get more excited for GSP's fights than anybody else. I think it was because he was the first guy that I really loved to watch as far as the UFC went, that was young and up-and-comer. He wasn't even the champion yet when I started watching the UFC, so I've been a fan of his for a long time because I got to see kind of the journey that he went on, and it was a unique one, that's for sure, where he went up against guys like Matt Hughes and lost, and then had to work his way back to that title shot against Matt Hughes and win. And that was probably one of my favorite UFC fights of all time, when he finally won the title against Matt Hughes and was able to defend it, or wasn't able to defend it against Matt Serra. So that was very interesting part. There was a part of history in UFC that I always look back on. I'm like, wow, that was really special. But this fight, going back to GSP versus Hendricks, I'm really excited about it because Johnny Hendricks has just ran through people. He's coming off a victory off of Carlos Condit. He's knocked out John Fitch. He's knocked out Martin Kampmann. 3 guys that are pretty legit and long time, welterweights in this UFC, in the UFC and in MMA. They're definitely 3 top 10 fighters in the welterweight division. So, and he's beaten them all by knockout besides Condit, who was able to. That was a close fight, and if that fight was 5 rounds, we might be talking about a Condit versus Hendricks rematch due to how close that fight was. But I thought Hendricks won due to the takedowns, and this is the first time that that GSP, has faced anyone with as good a wrestling as him in quite a while. Even Koscheck, I didn't think his wrestling would hold up to GSP's, and I was right about that. So this Hendricks-GSP fight is big. Hendricks has got knockout power. He's got All-American wrestling background pedigree from the NCAA at Oklahoma State. So this fight is huge for GSP, and we might see an upset. We might. I'm not going to say that I think Hendricks is going to win. I always pick George St. Pierre because he's my favorite fighter, so there's a little bias that goes into my pick, but this might be the guy. I have that like Chris Weidman, Anderson Silva feeling leading into this fight. I'm not really sure about this fight. I'm really not. I can't really make a decision. When I did my UFC pick'em, I picked GSP, but that was only because I get more points if he wins. So I don't know. I'm really undecided about that one, but I will go with GSP just for the audience's sake. Number one is not a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Chris Weidman, the middleweight champion now, after his knockout victory over Anderson Silva. It makes me so happy saying that. Coming off that vicious knockout of Anderson, definitely knew and said that once he beat Anderson the first time, he would then fight him again in Brazil, no less. But that's not happening. December 28th, they're going to do the rematch right where they did the last fight in MGM Grand, and I'm really excited for that, to have it be in Vegas again. I think that's good for the UFC too. This fight is so interesting because of the last fight where Anderson Silva kind of clowned with Chris Weidman and didn't necessarily respect his stand-up game. And it's going to be a very interesting fight, because does Anderson fury and rage at Chris Weidman because he knocked him out in front of all those people, or does he do the same thing that he did the last fight where he got caught because of it? Does Chris Weidman do the same thing he did the last fight? He even admitted, and I would agree with him, that he made some mistakes in that first round, and a round that he had a submission on Anderson Silva and didn't finish it. So does Chris Weidman focus on more so his submission game and his ground game for this upcoming fight more than he did in the first fight? I'm really undecided as to why, or really confused, should I say, as to why Anderson fought the way he did. I was pretty disappointed in the fact that he just put his hands down the way he did, and I don't like seeing that. Even though he's done it for a while, that's one of the reasons why I don't like him. And I do respect, though, that he gave Chris Weidman his limelight, which Chris Weidman definitely deserved. But this rematch is going to be the biggest fight probably of all time, UFC history-wise, because Anderson is the longest reigning champ, and he finally met his maker, so to speak, with this title fight. So, with that being said, I don't see how Chris Weidman could lose. I think that it's always said that a great champion is shown by how they come back from a loss, and you can make that case with a lot of former, combative champions. GSP for one. Frankie Edgar came back firing after that second fight. To switch combat sports, boxing, when Muhammad Ali lost and came back and won the title again. That's how greatness is measured, is by how fighters respond, and Anderson Silva needs to respond for this fight, and I'm not sure necessarily if he will. Chris Weidman is so hungry, so confident. He strives for more even when he wins. He's undefeated, and it's like he's got 8 losses on his record the way he fights. He just fights like you can feel that he knows that he has something to prove. And I think that's going to be a problem for Anderson again. Weidman has him in the wrestling game, in the submission game. Weidman was able to land a takedown in the first round of that fight, so I just see Weidman winning it. And that's my last prediction. I'll go through the run-through again. I would favor Shogun over Chael. I'm going to pick Chael, though. Jones versus Gustafsson, I think John Jones will win that fight due to his striking game, his stand-up. but I look at his record, and he always wins his fights via submission. But besides the one with Chael Sonnen, but I think he's gonna win this one due to strikes. The Cain Velasquez Jr. dos Santos 3, that was my third fight on the list, but I changed it to Anthony Pettis versus Ben Henderson 2. But for that Cain versus Jr. dos Santos fight, I'm going to go with Cain. I think he's going to end up being the greatest heavyweight of all time, and I think that he's going to beat Jr. dos Santos again, and Pettis over Benson Henderson. So really it's my top 6, not my top 5. GSP versus Hendricks, I'm going to go with GSP, but don't be surprised if Hendricks comes out with the win. And Silva versus Weidman 2, I'm going to go with Chris Weidman. Those are my top 5/6 fights that I'm really looking forward to for 2013. This year for the UFC has been really great, knock on wood. There's been no injuries hardly, besides this upcoming card. There's been no injuries and nothing too major. Between the major champions, John Jones hasn't had to pull out of a fight, GSP hasn't had to pull out of a fight, and Anderson hasn't had to pull out of a fight. So I'm really excited to see what is in store for these, the aftermath of these 5 fights, and I'll give you guys that video as well once the time comes. So thanks for watching, guys. Those are my top 5/top 6 UFC fights of 2013. Thanks for watching.